Julian hadn't heard his wife laugh in over 6 months. Not truly. And he couldn't remember the last time his son looked him in the eyes without hesitation. 11 years of marriage, 8 years of fatherhood, and somehow he had become a stranger in his own home without ever meaning to. He came home late, again 9:40 p.m. The porch light was still on. The hallway was dim and silent. He closed the door gently behind him, more out of habit than care. His footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor as he stepped out of his shoes, loosened his tie, and glanced into the living room. The TV was off. No toys on the carpet. Not a sound from upstairs. In the kitchen, a plate sat on the counter covered in foil. A sticky note rested on top, dinner's inside. Max already ate. I'm turning in early. Oh. The handwriting was neat, but tired. He didn't heat it up, just stood by the counter eating cold roast chicken, with one hand phone in the other, scrolling through work emails and client replies. A message from the V. A report from the Hong Kong team. A compliment from a client. Your pitch was killer. They loved you. He used to feel proud reading words like that. Now they barely registered. Upstairs, a door clicked shut. Probably Lena checking on Max. Or maybe she couldn't sleep again. Julian thought about going upstairs, maybe to say something kind, maybe to feel like a husband again. But he didn't. Silence was easier. And easier had gone on so long he'd forgotten what effort even looked like. The house was spotless, efficient, and cold. The hallway still displayed Max's finger paintings, some fading, now taped next to old family photos. One was from a beach trip when Max was 3, Lena in sunglasses, Julian with his arms around both of them. He used to glance at that photo for motivation. Now he hadn't truly looked at it in months. Lena used to dream of opening a children's bookstore. She would sketch ideas at the kitchen table while Max colored beside her. Julian would walk past phone to his ear, mouthing later with a smile he never followed through. Eventually the notebooks disappeared. So did the colored pencils. He thought she gave up, but really she just stopped hoping he'd notice. Max had grown quieter this year. He still said goodnight, Dad, when Julian came home sometimes from beneath the blankets. Julian would peek into his room, see a half-read book, a toy train frozen mid-track. But Max didn't ask him to play anymore. He hadn't asked in months. The bedroom light was off. Julian opened the door slowly, careful not to wake her. But Lena was already awake, lying on her side, eyes open, staring into nothing. She didn't turn to look at him. He stood in the doorway for a moment, then turned away and walked into the bathroom. Steam fogged the mirror. He wiped it with his hand and met his own reflection, rumpled suit. Tired eyes, a mouth too still to look peaceful. In the morning, the kitchen smelled of toast and coffee. Max sat at the table eating cereal, quietly eyes on a book. Lena stood at the sink washing dishes she had just used. Her wedding ring wasn't on her hand. It hadn't been for days. Julian hadn't noticed. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied without turning. He grabbed his travel mug, tousled Max's hair, and stepped out the door. A full calendar, heavy traffic, clients waiting. He didn't notice that Max didn't look up. He didn't ask why Lena no longer kissed him goodbye. And he certainly didn't realize that the woman who once turned this house into a home had already begun packing pieces of herself away quietly, piece by piece, and he was too distracted to see that she was almost gone. Julian returned home that Friday to an unusually quiet house. No dinner plate on the counter, no note. Just stillness, almost theatrical in how complete it was. The kitchen was spotless. The lights were dimmed. The fridge was humming, the only sound in the room. He checked his phone. No text from Lena. He walked upstairs and found Max's room empty. The bed was made not the sloppy way a child does it, but flat precise, like someone had done it for show. On the pillow was Max's stuffed tiger, the one he never slept without. In the master bedroom, Lena's side of the closet looked thinner, some clothes missing, jewelry tray half cleared. The drawers were closed, but Julian could feel it. The air was different, not angry, not stormy, just less, as if something had already left and taken the warmth with it. He opened the nightstand and saw her wedding ring resting in the corner of the drawer. Not thrown, not hidden, just placed. There was no letter, no confrontation, no drama. Just absence. He sat on the bed and stared at the floor. The silence pressed in, but still he refused to name it. He told himself maybe she took Max to visit her sister. Maybe she just needed space, a weekend, a reset. But when Saturday came and went with no message, no call, no sign of her car in the driveway, something in Julian finally cracked, not loudly but sharply like glass under pressure. He made Max's favorite breakfast Sunday morning pancakes with blueberries and sat at the table waiting. Max didn't come down. He found him curled on the couch, reading quietly, still in pajamas, even though it was almost noon. "Want to eat?" Julian asked too cheerfully. Max shrugged. "Not hungry." Julian sat beside him and put a hand on his son's back. Max tensed, then relaxed slightly, but didn't lean in. "Where's Mom?" Max asked softly, eyes fixed on the page. Julian opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he should say it. He didn't know anything except for one thing. He had never felt this much space between himself and the people he loved. And now it was finally too wide to ignore. That evening, he went into the laundry room to find it empty. The small calendar Lena used to keep the one where she marked Max's dentist appointments, school meetings. Even Julian's dry cleaning pickups had been wiped clean, not erased, removed entirely. The little systems she built to keep their lives stitched together were disappearing one by one. On Monday, Julian tried to work. He stared at spreadsheets, clicked through presentations, nodded on Zoom calls he couldn't remember 5 minutes later. The numbers still looked good. His name still rang with respect. But nothing landed. The victory felt hollow. The house felt bigger when he got home, and colder. In Max's room that night, Julian lingered a little longer. "Do you miss her?" he asked. Max didn't look up from his book. He just nodded. "I think she got tired." Julian swallowed. Tired of what? Max hesitated, then said, "Of being the only one who noticed everything." Julian stood there for a long time after Max fell asleep, looking at the shadows the nightlight threw on the wall. He remembered how years ago Lena once told him, "If I ever leave, it won't be with fireworks. It'll be with silence. You'll just come home one day and I'll be gone." He hadn't believed her then. Now he understood exactly what she meant. Julian stopped setting his morning alarm. He still woke up before sunrise out of habit, but there was no urgency anymore, just silence. He would lie there staring at the ceiling, listening for sounds that never came, the soft hum of Lena making coffee, Max's feet padding down the hallway, the clink of dishes in the sink. Now the mornings were blank still. He moved through them like a ghost. His shirt stayed wrinkled longer. He forgot to shave. Sometimes he wore mismatched socks. The Julian heart of 3 months ago, polished, punctual, sharp, would have been horrified. The Julian heart of today barely noticed. At work, he missed calls, showed up late to meetings. His coworkers began asking him if everything was all right. He smiled and said yes, of course, just tired. Then he'd go into his office, close the door, and sit in the quiet, not doing anything, not thinking, just existing. In the evenings, he made dinner for Max. At first, it was edible, then it was rushed. By the end of the week, they were eating frozen waffles for dinner while watching reruns of old cartoons. Max didn't complain, but he didn't talk much either. One night, Julian opened a cabinet looking for salt and found Lena's old mug pushed to the back, the chipped one with the bluebirds on it, the one she used every morning. It still smelled faintly of chamomile. He sat down at the kitchen table and just held it for a long time. Later, after Max had gone to sleep, Julian wandered into the garage. The place was a mess. Tools half-packed, a stack of boxes from who knows when. In the far corner beneath an old blanket was the wooden toy chest he and Lena built together when Max was born. Julian sat down beside it and ran his hand along the surface. It was covered in dust. They built it one weekend during a rainy spell with a bottle of wine and a YouTube tutorial. She laughed so hard when he drilled the screws backward and had to take the whole side off. That was before everything became so serious. Before timelines and deals and boardrooms swallowed him whole. He didn't realize he was crying until he tasted salt on his lip. It wasn't loud, just steady. A quiet, exhausted kind of grief, the kind that seeps in slowly, like a tide creeping over everything you once thought was solid. He remembered how Lena used to ask him if he was happy, not "Are you okay?" Not "Is everything fine?" but really happy, and how he'd always say, "Sure. Why wouldn't I be?" Now sitting on the concrete garage floor, he finally understood her silence when he answered that way. He walked back into the house, turned on the hallway light, and stared at the space where the family photo used to hang. The one he hadn't noticed was missing until tonight. He stood there for minutes, hours maybe. Time didn't feel real anymore. The next morning, he made pancakes again, burned the first batch, got the second one right. Max ate 2 bites and said, "Thanks, Dad." Julian smiled, and it felt unfamiliar on his face. Later that afternoon, he opened Lena's old sketchbook from the bookshelf. He hadn't known she kept it there. Inside were drawings of cafes, bookstores, little characters with wide eyes and crooked smiles. In the margins were notes cozy, warm, simple, joyful. He didn't recognize the handwriting at first. Then he did, and it felt like a punch in the chest. He sat at the table with the sketchbook open in front of him until the sun went down. No emails, no calls, no meetings. Just the quiet echo of everything he had missed and the slow, aching truth that no amount of success could bring it back. Julian didn't say much that week, but he didn't leave early anymore. Each morning he woke up when Max did, not before, not after, together. He sat at the table while Max ate his cereal even when no words were exchanged. He packed his own lunch, badly uneven sandwiches, too much peanut butter, but he packed it anyway. Max started putting a napkin in his bag without saying a word. One day it had a little stick figure doodled on it. Julian kept it folded in his wallet. He stopped checking emails at dinner. He stopped taking calls in the car. His phone stayed on the kitchen counter when he was home, screen down, volume off. One night, Max asked, "Can we eat on the porch?" Julian blinked. "It's cold out." Max shrugged. "We used to, though. When Mom made soup." Julian nodded. That night, they ate outside. Just reheated noodles and a blanket over their legs. No soup, but it was something. He started washing dishes instead of leaving them for the next day. Took out the trash before it overflowed. Changed the hallway light bulb Lena had been asking him about for months. Not because he thought it would bring her back, but because it should have been done long ago. Some days he still broke down. Quietly, in the car, in the shower, in the middle of folding laundry when one of her socks turned up mismatched, faded, and suddenly unbearable. Max never said much when it happened. He just sat near him or leaned his shoulder into his dad's arm. That was enough. Julian found himself walking past the old cafe on 5th where Lena used to get almond croissants. One afternoon, he stepped inside. The woman behind the counter didn't recognize him, but she smiled anyway. "Need help finding something?" He looked at the display case, then shook his head. "I used to come here years ago." "Well, she did." The woman smiled kindly. "People always come back eventually." He bought 2 croissants and left one at Lena's old writing desk. He didn't text her. He didn't try to explain. There was nothing to say that could unwrite what had already been written. But he wanted her to know if she ever walked through that door again that the house would look different. Not fixed, not new, just open. He started journaling awkward and unsure, mostly one-line entries. Max smiled today, didn't forget the trash, didn't flinch when I saw her name in my inbox. And one day I'm still here, and I'm finally really here. The silence in the house hadn't gone away, but it no longer felt like punishment. It felt like permission to try to wait, to earn every ounce of forgiveness, even if it never came. One evening, Max came down holding a photo album, the old kind, thick pages, plastic sleeves. "Can we look through it?" he asked. Julian hesitated, then nodded. They sat on the floor and flipped through birthdays, beach trips, blurry Christmas photos. Lena smiling, and all of them eyes full of light Julian hadn't truly seen at the time. Max pointed to a picture of the 3 of them on a carousel. "I don't remember this," he said. Julian put a hand on his son's back. "I do. You were scared at first. Then your mom told you it was okay to be scared, that even brave kids hold hands." Max nodded slowly. And for the first time in a very long time, Julian felt something close to peace. Not because everything was okay, but because he had finally stopped running from what wasn't. The leaves had started to fall when Julian realized it had been exactly 3 months since Lena left. He didn't mark the calendar. He didn't count the days obsessively. But one morning, walking Max to school, he noticed the wind had changed sharper, cooler, and it pulled a quiet memory with it, Lena, in her favorite scarf, laughing, as Max kicked through piles of golden leaves on the sidewalk. She hadn't come back. She hadn't called. But she had sent one message, a short, simple one. "Hope Max is doing okay. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Not yet. Just not yet." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a door opening, but it wasn't locked either. Julian didn't reply, not right away. He read it 4 times and then put his phone down. He walked outside and raked the yard instead. When he finally responded the next day, it wasn't desperate. "He's okay. We're both trying. No pressure. Just thank you." That afternoon, Max came home with a drawing from school. 3 stick figures, 1 tall one with long hair, 1 small in between. "It's us," he said, "from before." Julian smiled. "Do you think we could draw a new one sometime?" Max looked at him, then nodded. "Maybe, if we earn it." Julian laughed soft from the chest. "Fair enough." Week by week, the house changed. Not in ways most people would notice, but Julian did. The dining table was used again. Books started reappearing, ones Lena used to read. Max had found them in boxes in the garage and brought them in himself. There was music now, quiet instrumental playlists during dinner. Julian had learned to make grilled cheese without burning it. Max taught him how to fold towels the way Lena used to. The silence hadn't left, but it had softened. It no longer echoed. It listened. One Sunday, Julian and Max went to the bookstore, the little local one Lena always loved, but Julian had never entered. He bought 2 books, one for Max and 1 blank journal for himself. When the cashier rang them up, she said, "You 2 new to town?" Julian smiled. "No, just finally showing up." He no longer checked his phone for messages from her every morning. But sometimes when he looked out the window, he found himself wondering what it would feel like. Not for her to come home, but for her to want to. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point. Not waiting for her to walk back through the door, but becoming the kind of man she could walk toward again if she ever chose to. That night, Max crawled into his lap with a blanket. "I miss her," he whispered. Julian pulled him close. "Me too." They didn't say more. They didn't need to. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, the lights were low, the warmth was real, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt like home.